Your youth ministry might be full, fun, and firing on all cylinders, yet still failing. In this episode, we're going to be looking at the issues that are sinking ministries from the inside before anyone even notices.
You know, you've seen like these studies where like people that like win the lottery, like their lives just crumble. It's like because their character and their life, like their family, like hasn't matched all of a sudden their level of wealth.
Yeah.
And so, so you have to like grow in several different areas, like even in ministry, like you have to like grow in your character and your personal life, grow in your family, like to where if you have an elevated role at a church or like a bigger ministry opportunity and your life isn't there to support it, then it's just going to emphasize the flaws that you have.
Yeah. Have you ever seen youth group go wrong?
Never. It's always been absolutely perfect in every experience that I've had.
I mean, the good news is like we've never done anything wrong, right? It's just like all the other people that we
observe
know
from afar.
Yes, you know.
It's like fireworks, going off like from a far distance.
Or that meme where the girl's like swinging on the swing while the house burns down behind her.
Yeah.
That's us, really.
No, I mean, I will say like this episode's about failed youth ministries, and praise the Lord, like I don't think, I mean, like, and this is not what we're getting at, where it's just like where literally like everything just implodes. Like there are some ministries that have like just imploded, like they, and my first experience was the first like full-time position that I had at a church. It wasn't that, and it's like, you see, hindsight is always 20/20. So I had walked into a ministry where I was the fourth youth pastor in 2 years. And two of those, so the three before me, two of them had moral failures. And that's why they left. And so I think I had a little bit of credibility in this, just walking into something that had failed. Like there was so much mistrust, rightfully so.
Yeah.
For like a leader. So the first like 6 months of this was literally just earning people's trust. Like, so like, it's okay. Like you can actually trust someone in an authority position, like in this church.
Yeah.
And so with that, I think, there's extremes. Like there's a scale, where it's like, okay, like if there was a moral failure, if, like there was a tragedy or, like, I mean, all these things like, can, and sometimes it's not like as visual like that. Because we do hear stories of like, Youth Group Chronicles is one of those where it's just like, there's been some failures in youth ministry in that regard, just lack of judgment or, all those different stuff.
Bringing a goat to camp.
We're not really necessarily talking about that.
No.
Like about the extreme here. What I think we're addressing here today is more the quiet killers of the gradual slope of coasting in youth ministry. And we may not even out from the outside say that that's a failure.
Yeah.
Because attendance might still be happening, like there might. But what we're more addressing is, okay, like we want to be honoring to the Lord. We want to glorify God in our ministries. We want to be effective, and anything short of effective and like reaching our potential of what we know the Lord can do, that might be on the road to failure, not like a catastrophic. So if you clicked on this title thinking like, okay, it's going to be juicy details of like a catastrophic failure of ministry. No.
You have to pay. You have to go to the paid platform.
The paid platform for that. No. And really, it's that quiet killing of ministry that happens where there's silent mistakes happening, and we may not even be aware of them.
Yeah.
So think of it like this: like you're on an airplane. Yes, if your engine just blew up and your wing fell off, like you would know that things are bad. But you also have like, planes that are like literally have a pinhole gas leak and they're slowly leaking out gas.
Yeah.
Or jet fuel. Like and so like they're just not aware of it until it's too late, And so I think that's what we're going to be addressing too, is just those kind of things that are just silent shifts of really trying to focus on the right things, the more effective things. We have talked with, I mean, right now I think there's like 215 or so youth leaders in our online community that we talk with regularly and get feedback from. We have we're almost, this is I think episode 99.
Yep.
So 99 episodes of creating content specifically for youth ministry effectiveness.
Yep.
We have been practitioners of this in our own ministries, like just trying to figure out, okay, like what is working, what is not working. We're always trying to refine that. Not the experts by any means, but we've been in this space for a long time and really trying to figure out how we can best disciple students in the next generation and reach them, advance the gospel, not just put on a show.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of the angle that we're coming from this episode is what are some things that might be, silent killers of effectiveness in youth ministry that we want to address and make sure that we're aware of.
Yeah, that might even be celebrated within the youth ministry community.
Yeah.
And so the first is, hey everyone, are you looking for ways to spark real spiritual momentum this October? The TalkTober Challenge, sponsored by Beyond the Youth Room, is a great opportunity in order for your entire youth group to get involved in the Great Commission. The TalkTober Challenge seeks to equip 1,000 students across the nation to each have 10 gospel conversations in the month of October for a total amount of 10,000 gospel conversations. When you sign up for the TalkTober Challenge, you'll receive directly to your doorstep a box filled with kits for every single student in your youth ministry, complete with bracelets, beads, free gospel sharing cards, and a video that will train all of your students how to share the gospel from start to finish. We did one of these challenges back in May, and the average youth group saw a 313% increase in gospel shares. And we saw many different testimonies, like the shy student who completed the challenge within the first 2 weeks, a student who shared the gospel boldly with his younger brother, and just countless stories of kids being willing to step up and share the truth of the gospel with those around them. And so if you're looking for ways to get more students involved or to get a jump start on sharing the gospel in your youth group, look no further than the TalkTober Challenge. You can go ahead right now, click on the link below and sign up, and we will ship your kits directly to your door. And the best part of all of this, it is all free to you. And so we want to make sure that you take advantage of this because we know that the 1,000 kits are going to go quickly. And so if you want to participate along with us in this, go ahead, find that link in the description below, sign up today for the TalkTober Challenge, and we are excited to see what God is going to do in your youth ministry through this. And so the first is a youth ministry that is failing is focusing on attendance over discipleship. And here's the harsh reality. They might be showing up, but they might not be growing up.
Well, and I want to say and make sure that we're clear here too, that like you should be counting attendance.
Yes.
Like it's, so each person in that number matters. Like that's a person, a number represents a person. Yes. And so that's why I think it's important to word like this, focus on attendance over discipleship.
Yes.
It's not instead of. It's,
well, and this is why I think, as we get into this, right, you have the flip side, but what we're saying is, look, this is from the outside looking in. People might be like, man, they're killing it. But in reality, that it's crumbling from the inside. There's another side of this where people are like, oh, well, they have a lot of people, therefore they must be doing something bad. It's like, we're really holy and that's why we're small. And it's like, no, if you're really multiplying disciples, like you wouldn't be small for long. So there is like that balance, right? Where like it's so easy for one to look at the other and be like, well, they're doing this and that's why. And then you have the other, it's like, well, they're not growing, so they must be doing something wrong. And the reality is this, it's like, no, we want to make disciples, not converts. Now, making disciples means our group does grow. We should track that. We should know how many were there. We should be able to see this, right? Because if it's spiritual healthy things grow, right? But at the same time, if we can get, we've said it a million times, like, look, we can get a lot of kids here if we just give away an iPad. Like, like, hey, get your friends here, we'll give an iPad, or, that's kind of like the placeholder. But like, you can grow a youth group off hype. But the reality is that, we see the story of the disciples in John 6, where Jesus fed 5,000 people. The crowds wanted to follow him. And he began teaching hard truths, and it said many of his disciples turned back and no longer walked with him. And so if we are focusing on attendance over discipleship, where it's like, hey, we're growing and it's a rocket ship, it's an upward trend, it's like, hey, we're not saying you're doing anything wrong. What we're saying is that might mask the reality that internally something is not right. Yeah. And so the lesson is like a crowd doesn't equal commitment. When truth gets tough, only disciples remain. So maybe give an example of like somebody who's like, man, like we've really been growing, but like, what's an example you've seen maybe in like another youth ministry that you just happen to kind of like have proximity to, or something like where you saw maybe something like this? Yeah.
So youth ministry that I talked with one time that had great numbers. They were asking me just some advice on a couple different things. They had like a pretty large attendance like in their programs and everything. And they were explaining, and I could just kind of tell as they were hitting on this, they were explaining that everything that they revolved was like getting more people in the door. Like it was like, it was very attendance focused, whether they could realize that or not. Like they just kind of, but just as an outside observer, they had explained how efficiently they had like invites newcomer,
First time
assimilation,
visitors, yeah.
first time visitor, like, check-in, like all this different stuff. And what I had to kind of peel back the layers of is, sometimes we can be efficient, but then we don't really ask if that's the most effective. Like, so it's like, you can be efficient at things that shouldn't be done in the first place. Now, I'm not saying you shouldn't have a newcomer check-in, but we can get so focused on the details of being efficient in one area that we miss out. Like, okay, what's the reason that we have these processes to get people like into a deeper level of commitment with the Lord, to start a relationship with Jesus? And so even just like a shift like that. So sometimes, we have, attendance that's coming, but we're just not, like, it's literally just a quick shift of like inviting them deeper. And that's why, like, I'm a huge proponent of, we've talked about this so many times, the 4 chairs, like identifying where your students are so that like how to progress them into a deeper understanding and relationship with the Lord. Yeah. And so with that, like we, where we live in the DC area, a lot of people have been recently affected by like the DOGE, and that's like the hot topic, like the Department of Government Efficiency. And I think some people have even like, mentioned that it's like, okay, like, but we don't want to be efficient at the things we shouldn't even be doing in the first place. Yeah. And so some of those things, like, it's like, okay, we want to make sure that what we're doing, what we're focused on our efforts and attention to are the things that are moving the needle forward with growing a disciple, because there's lots of things that we can be known for. And I think, this analogy that I often use is, when Jesus left the earth, he said to make disciples, and one day he's going to come back to tell, to see if we did that. And so it's like, if I, leave the house and I told my son, hey, before I get home, make your bed. And then I leave and I come back. What is the first thing I'm going to ask him? Like, did you make your bed? I was like, well, no, I put away the dishes. It's like, or I cleaned up some toys, or I help mom with the laundry, whatever. It's like, those aren't bad things. It's just, what is the one thing that I asked you to do? And I think that's where we get caught up is where we can get so focused on having an entertaining program or attracting a crowd that we miss like the one thing that Jesus did tell us to do is like make disciples. Like, what is, and he's going to come back. He's like, did you make disciples? And you're like, we had awesome PowerPoint games. Like, we had awesome snacks. Like we had themed,
camp
youth
nights.
group nights and not that those things are bad again. Yeah. But it's just like we don't want to overlook the core aspect of what we're called to do. This next generation is to make disciples.
Yeah, well, and Brady Shear, who puts out some good Christian stuff, I'd encourage you to follow him if you're listening to this and you don't already. But he said that they did a study of the fastest growing churches in America. You know what the number one metric that they all had in common was? They were all in communities that were the fastest growing communities in America. So it was like they were growing, but it was just the fact that the area was growing. So again, not bad, but that's one way where we might see, well, we're growing, and be like, well, maybe just because they're building houses in your area. Like, it might not be because you're making disciples, right? It might just be because like more people are moving to the area. It's like, praise God, but make sure we're about those right things. And that's the big thing. So yeah, number one, a sign that your youth ministry is headed for failure, or what we learned from failed youth ministries, is that they prioritized attendance over discipleship. And the second thing we've learned about failed youth ministries is that they prioritize information over transformation. I love this quote. Truth that doesn't lead to transformation is just trivia. I shared that with our kids. So it's like biblical knowledge without application is just Bible trivia. And it really helps us to understand. It's so often we're like, well, if we just give them more knowledge, if we give them more good teaching, if we give them more good theology, then everything will work out. And the reality is like, no, the Great Commission is not teach them, it's teach them to obey. And that becomes an incarnational process where we're saying, look, we want this truth to transform your life, not just for you to be able to sit in the smartest Bible study in church and say, well, is it pre-trib or post-trib or mid-trib? Or, it's like, again, not that that's bad, but the reality is, hey, are you really focusing on what matters? And we see that where, who had the most biblical knowledge in the New Testament, right? Is the Pharisees. Yeah. And Matthew 23, he calls them whitewashed tombs, which I think, I know actually, because I heard somebody speak on this. We lose so much of what that really meant. Like when Jesus said that to
like your death. Like you're dead on the inside.
And it's like they knew the truth, but they weren't changed by it. And so you also have some people who are like, look, what these kids need is just more biblical knowledge. And what we found is, to go back to what the great theologian Mark Twain said was like, it's not the parts of the Bible that I don't understand that keep me up at night. It's the parts that I do understand that keep me up at night. And so a lot of youth ministries are focusing on, biblical knowledge, which again, we want sound theology, we want sound doctrine, we need sound teaching. That's one of the, the reasons that he gave the apostles, the evangelists, the teachers, the shepherds. But the reality is that, hey, if we're just focusing on information, then our kids they'll just do better at Bible trivia and it won't actually impact their life.
Well, and I was having a conversation with some church leaders recently where we were talking about, they're like, we should have like an overarching, like, for all of youth ministry, like what do we want them to know by the time that
haven't we all had this conversation?
Yeah. And then like, well, why don't we just reverse it back even further? It's like, let's start from kindergarten. Like, what do we want them to know? Like all through elementary, all the way to I was like, one, if you can show me one person that has gone all the way through, like maybe one or two people, like in our whole church, like, have gone from like literally kindergarten, because we live in a very transient area. It's very rare to have someone that will literally graduate all the way through, like, and come to everything.
Yep.
And so, so I understand like the heart behind that. It's like, okay, we want to be thorough. Like, we want to be thorough in communicating the word of God and teaching, truth. But I think we want to, make sure that we're prioritizing that transformation, not just like, what do we want them to know, but it's like, who do we want them to become as a result of being in our ministry? Yeah. And I think that's just little, that little switch in that question is like, it's not knowledge based. And like, we have a tendency to think that discipleship is didactic, meaning discipleship is only teaching. Like it's only, and it's a two-wing plane. Like, we have relational discipleship, which is like, growing in community, like gospel community, doing the one another's, like, towards each other. 59 commands in the New Testament of the one another's, like love one another, care for one another, share one another's burdens. And then you have, the idea of the didactic teaching. You want to teach the truth. You want to equip the saints. You want to do all those things too, but we can't just see it as informational. It needs to be, who are you becoming as a result of knowing this, not just know this.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, youth pastors, in this episode, we're taking time to walk through things we've seen in failed youth ministries for the express purpose of helping you avoid these or fix these in your youth ministry. And one of the best ways to do that is through our free online community, the Youth Ministry Mastermind. The reason why it's so helpful is that it's like having hundreds of youth pastors in your corner to where you don't have to do youth ministry alone. We know youth ministry can be lonely because you're not quite on the level of senior leadership, but you also can't be completely vulnerable with your students. And that's why a community like this is perfectly designed to help you and encourage you as you continue to make disciples who make disciples. Of course, the free online community is filled with like-minded youth pastors, free live trainings and calls, free resources you can use, personalize, and tailor specifically to your youth ministry, all free of charge. You'll also be the first to find out anything going on, any cool initiatives like the TalkTober challenge that Beyond the Youth Room is participating in or putting on. And so we would love for you to take a second right now and go ahead and join that community for free. That link's in the description. You can check it out. It takes a minute to join. And when you join, you'll get a message from me, Ryan, hoping to find a time to connect with you just to hear what God is doing in your ministry, to be a listening ear, provide perspective, encouragement, whatever you need, we're here for you. So go ahead, take a few seconds, join that free youth ministry mastermind, and then come back here, and we hope you enjoy the rest of this episode. The number 3 thing that we learned from failed youth ministries is that they had an unwillingness to confront. One of the biblical stories that we see so much is, Eli and his sons, Hophni and Phinehas, and the fact that Eli knew that his sons were doing things that they shouldn't have been doing, and Eli ignored them. And eventually both his sons die in battle. The Ark of the Covenant was lost to the Philistines. And then that news comes back to Eli and he falls over and he dies. And it's like, what a tragic story of this thing that he knew. But the harsh reality is what you tolerate will eventually dominate. And so we've seen a lot of failed youth ministries. We've even talked to kids, to be honest. And you always want to be careful, right? Because like a kid, says some things, and you don't want to take that as gospel, right? I'm sure there's been many kids who've gone to other youth groups and been like, "Yeah, I went to like that youth group down the street. Ryan's the youth pastor, and I like hated it, and they did this, right?" So we never say that. But one thing that we have heard from a lot of students is like, hey, I've been to this youth group or that youth group, and it's just like school. Like, nobody pays attention. Like, everybody's on their phones. Hey, the kids like behavior. And we know, like, we're not dealing with, like, if we ever have a perfect youth ministry, then we need to leave because we're the one who will screw it up. But the reality is that if the youth ministry or the youth group becomes just like school, then the kids don't really see that the gospel transforms. The kids don't really see that, hey, this is different. Hey, this is not what it be. But a lot of times youth pastors don't get into youth. Well, I don't think anybody, hopefully you don't get into youth ministry because you love confronting people on their issues.
That's the harder aspect of ministry.
So has there been a time where you saw somebody who just wouldn't, or an illustration of somebody who just wouldn't confront, eventually brought down?
When I came to Christ as a teenager, and I was going at the time to a really small, church in the area that we didn't have a paid youth leader. Like we didn't, it was just like our youth ministry was probably 10, 12 kids. Now I'm looking back, it's like that was how many Jesus had too, but
one of you, got to watch.
Yeah, exactly. And but there was a buzz around a certain youth ministry in our area that they were like, it's the spot to be. Like, you have to go there on Wednesday night. Like, and so even though I went to another church, I was like, I had some friends that went to this youth group, and like they're like, and if you're serious about the Lord, like you need to come check this out. There's like a really cool thing happening. And I remember attending with one of my friends. And literally, like the whole time that the speaker, like the pastor was preaching, everybody in the audience was talking and like not even listening. And I was looking around because I'm coming from like, it's like if you did that in my church, like you'd be called out, like, Keith, stop talking, like, and they just didn't do anything about it. And I'm like looking around, and like I was like, no one is even listening. Like everybody is just doing their own thing, and like this guy's pouring his heart out up here. I'm like, I almost felt compelled to like get up and be like, guys, stop, like. And then I was like, but it just totally changed my perspective. I was like I don't think they're serious about really paying attention to the Lord here. And then there's like I was like, well, maybe that was just a fluke. So I attended a few more times, like just to kind of check things out. And I remember there was kids I knew, from school that went there, and like one, I was like surprised. I was like, wow, I didn't even realize they were a believer. Like that's awesome that they're here. And then they there was like an invitation, like to come down front, like an altar call, like to give their life to Christ. So then they went down, and I'm like, yes, like my friend, like that I knew from school just gave their life to Christ. And I was like, that's awesome. Next time I was there, same thing, same person, same people. Like, you're giving your life to Christ again? Like, it was like this weird, like the same kids, and they're like, we've had this many hundreds of students give their life to Christ. I'm like, I'm pretty sure it's the same people every week. Like, have you ever? So anyway, so it was just one of those things where I was like, I can't really take this, youth group seriously because, and they did have like a big crowd. Like it was definitely, they had an unwillingness. I think that was what the issue was. Like they had an unwillingness to confront, like, hey, you already trusted Christ, every week for the past 4 months. Like it's like, but I think they were just like, wow, the Lord's working, so they must be. It's like. Well, no, that's not how the Lord works. Like, as far as like, you're not born every day. Like, and so anyways, with that, I think that unwillingness to confront, can really harm a ministry, not even just for the people that need to be confronted, but for the people that, because similar to me, like I was trying to live for the Lord, and I was like, I lost respect for this ministry because they're not willing to confront things. Yeah. And ultimately I didn't get involved there because I was like, this is not, a place that takes, sin seriously and confrontation seriously. And so, so you might even lose leaders if you're not addressing, like you might lose really solid student leaders that are trying to walk with the Lord, but they're like, hey, if they're not going to address this issue, then we can't stay here. Yeah,
absolutely. The number 4 thing that we learned from failed youth ministries is that they have no leadership pipeline. And so the harsh reality is that the people you equip will outlast the programs you run. And so, again, God anoints people, not programs. And we see this with Moses poured into Joshua, but we don't see a new successor after Joshua. And in fact, it comes to Judges 2:10, where it says, "And there arose another generation who neither knew the Lord nor knew what he had done." And so we see that Moses poured into Joshua, and we're not told why, but right, we don't see that successor after Joshua that Joshua is pouring into. And if you don't multiply leaders, the movement will die with you. And so there's a lot of ministries, and this has been the critique of like some very large prominent churches, and I don't think it's a fair critique, right? Like this idea that, hey, like ministry shouldn't be personality driven, like we would all agree and say yes. But at the same time too, if God's given you a dynamic personality, that doesn't mean that you should veil that because you're worried that people are gonna come to the gospel because of the your preaching style or whatever. And so I think it's an unfair critique, but we do see a lot of times where this ministry just explodes, and then when that pastor has more filling or dies or moves elsewhere, it just falls back in on itself. Yeah. And oftentimes in youth ministry, this is really hard, right? Because who is the leadership pipeline? Well, it's the students, and so we now have to give ministry over to students that's where we're at in our youth ministry, where we're seeing all this stuff, but it's like, okay, now the next step is like, I'm holding this ministry back because I have to start giving this over. In fact, we were playing kick the can the other night, and it was funny because it was like a random, like nothing special, like, but we had a really good just attendance, and my wife and I, Kathleen and I, were like one of the ones guarding the can. I hate playing kick the can because the kids can never figure out how to play the game. It's so annoying. But so we're like, all right, we're gonna guard the can, and we have like a bunch of kids in jail, and like this girl comes sprinting in, kicks the can, and like takes off, and all these kids like flee. And I look at Kathleen, I'm like, who was that? And she's like, I don't know. And so this girl just like came in, and like neither of us knew her name, didn't know who she was. Like I asked somebody else, I'm like, hey, is it like our first time? I'm like, no, she's been coming. So I was like, okay, we've reached the point now where like I can't be the one, oh, that's a new kid, that's a new kid, that's a new kid. It's like, so I have to turn this over. And a lot of times churches never hit that point. They just keep building it around one person, and then I hate to say the experience, but like the ministry suffers because of that. So have you ever seen a situation where there was a failed of a leadership pipeline to develop that?
Yeah, I think I think back of like even just my own experience with that. Like, so we had a phenomenal thing right now, you know, because I've been able to serve in the same context of ministry, you know, since 2008. When I first came to Prince William, like I was here at this location for 7.5 years before, you know, I had an opportunity to move into an associate pastor role at our church. And what was kind of cool was we had a student who had graduated from our ministry. He had interned and he was graduating. And it was like a perfect storm of like all those things lining up. He was graduating college and wanted to go into ministry. So it was like, oh my goodness, like this is like the, you know. And there was another point where there was an opportunity for me to move into another role a couple of years before that. And one of the things, like, you know, our senior leadership was like, well, you're not going to move into this role until you find someone else, like to, you know, it's like, it's not a good idea to just move without having like a successor, you know. And so, and then through that process of looking for a successor for me in that role, I realized that I wanted to stay. And so I was like, and maybe that was the Lord's mercy of just like, okay, there wasn't a readiness there for our ministry for me to transition to another until like it was the right time where we had like this kind of lining up perfectly, you know, circumstances and a godly guy, and he led faithfully for a couple of years before, you know, he's now at another church as a campus pastor. And so with that, I think, I mean, there was something I experienced where I was like, I wasn't prepared at first, and then the Lord just called me to stay even longer. And then there was another circumstance where the Lord was calling me to go into another role, and then He also provided someone else too that we had been investing in for many years.
Yeah, and I think it's very easy to say, like, when it's time for you to pass the torch and there's nobody there, that's your responsibility. Like we're called to train somebody up. Now we can't control that, right? Like we can't always. We're not responsible. Once we leave the ministry, like that's somebody else. They're gonna have to give an account, whatever. Yep. But at the same time, what's been like convicting of me. It's like I need to replicate, and it's like, but am I the one who's kept us from replicating? Because it's just easier for me to do it. So the number 5 thing we see that we learned from failed youth ministries is a lack of prayer. And this goes right to that, right? Without prayer, your ministry is only as strong as your personality, which is a very harsh reality. And
if you don't have a good personality, you're done. Yeah.
There you go. But yeah, we see this with Saul, right? Like Saul was, he was taller than everybody else. He was handsome. Like he was obviously like the people's choice for king, but yet morally, like he didn't wait for Samuel. And, you know, God said, hey, because like of Saul's disobedience to wait for you, like I've removed my anointing from him. Yeah. And so we see that, when prayer is replaced by pressure, ministry becomes like disobedient performance. Like so, when we're forced into just like continuing to build this because it's not built on prayer, then it ultimately becomes an idol to us. Like ministry itself becomes an idol.
Well, I think we underestimate like how powerful, you know, prayer is. And I love this quote by Samuel Chadwick. It says, "The one concern of the devil is to keep the saints from praying." He fears nothing from prayerless studies, prayerless work, prayerless religion. He laughs at our toil, mocks at our wisdom, but trembles when we pray. And I think that, I mean, it's like, and we know this, like, we know it's like, yeah, you should pray more. Like everybody knows, like, but to really, you know, make decisions in your ministry where you're dependent on prayer, like where you're like, we're not going to move forward unless we're praying. Like we're going to, and to schedule it, even like in your weekly routine.
All right,
like
Keith. I'm feeling convicted enough. You can stop talking about this.
Schedule it in your programming, even like it's like not just like a transition, that happens on the stage. That's the only time you pray. It's like like
so the band can sneak up there.
So the band can sneak up or sneak off the stage or transition to your message, whatever. So with that, definitely focus on a dependence on the prayer, and like design your ministry where you have to pray, like where it's like we can't go a program without really depending on the Lord in prayer.
Yeah. All right. Last one. The number 6 thing we learned from failed youth ministries. Get ready for it to get a little personal. The ministry growth outpaces the youth pastor's growth. So you can't lead others where you haven't gone yourself.
Yeah.
And we see that with Samson, right? So Samson had, all the power, the strength, charisma, but his character never caught up to his calling. And so eventually his private compromise led to public collapse.
Yep.
And so if your platform outgrows your personal walk with God, destruction is inevitable. And that's a scary thought. And that should drive us every day back to God's word to say, okay, God, like as this ministry continues to grow, like please help me continue to grow so that I can stay on top of it. And I think that's so what are some ways that like you can do that or maybe a situation that you've seen or just like some general ways to
I would say so personal experience with this. I knew someone who wanted to have a larger role. Like they were like, okay, I'm in this like smaller role. I really want to have like a larger platform, a larger, congregation, so to speak. Like I really want to, and there wasn't a pathway like in his current context, like to kind of move forward with that. And so he ended up taking a job somewhere else at another church, and which was a larger platform, like what he had wanted to.
Yeah.
And I think, he wasn't promoted to like a larger role like within his previous context because like it just wasn't character ready. Like he just there wasn't the character there to really match like a larger role. And so when he finally got into that larger role at another church, like not even 6 months later, he had a moral failure. And it was like telling that it's like, okay, we want to make sure our character is matching like the calling, like you mentioned, and so the way that you can do that, one, like have accountability, like have guys that you can talk with, girls that you can talk with that like really care about your soul, that you can be honest with. Don't just assume, like I think there's a high tolerance for sin, that we're just like, it's not that big a deal, and it's like we tell ourselves lies, even about our own sin, but also have people that are like not just yes men, like that'll actually tell you like, hey, you're acting really dumb, or like you're really full of yourself, or like this is not a wise decision for the health of your future ministry. Yeah. And if you don't have people that'll actually tell you those things, then it's going to be really hard for you to last and grow. But yeah, I mean, I love even what our friend Greg Steer, he says like the success. I mean, because he's had so much success like in Dare to Share, like over the years, and being effective, like at really reaching the next generation. And it's like, how do you do that? He preaches a lot. He travels a lot. Like and so he sees himself as like part monk, part missionary. And he's like, part monk is like, because I never neglect my time with the Lord. He's like, everywhere I am, like the first, like hour or so that I get up, like I'm spending time with the Lord. He's like, I never like, neglect that, because I know that as soon as I start doing that, that's when, I can't take people further, spiritually after that.
Yeah, that's definitely humbling. And, as we think through that, it's a challenge for each of us. And I think too, when we understand the weight of our calling, like that really helps. When our focus is really on the fact that like, I will give an account to a holy, almighty God for the decisions I make, and I will be judged more strictly as a teacher. That's not to build shame and guilt. Just combine those into,
What did you call it? I don't even want to repeat that.
There was an L in there. If you waited this long, congrats, you got that. But
yeah, I'm afraid of accidentally saying something else, but
it wouldn't be that. But this idea of like, hey, that's not what it's there to build. But there is a healthy fear. Like there's a fear of God that will keep me in His Word and say, God, I don't ever want to do anything that's going to wreck this.
Pray for the sustaining hand of the Lord, like to not make a wreck of your faith and your ministry. But also, I was thinking about this too. Like, and you've seen like these studies where like people that like win the lottery, like their lives just crumble. It's like because their character and their life, like their family, like hasn't matched all of a sudden their level of wealth.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, so you have to like grow in several different areas. Like even in ministry, like you have to like grow in your character, in your personal life, grow in your family, like to where if you have an elevated role at a church or like a bigger ministry opportunity and your life isn't there to support it, then it's just going to emphasize the flaws that you have.
Yeah. Yeah, well, if any of these resonated with you, this does not mean that it's too late, right? These are warning signs. These are things that by God's grace we can work through. And so, if any of these resonated with you, make sure you join that community and reach out. And when we reach out, just say like, "Hey, I'd love to talk to you about one of these things. We'd love to get you plugged in, get you connected, and help be that accountability for you." And so, we appreciate you taking time to watch this episode, and we'll see you on the next one. Now that we've walked through what we've learned from failed youth ministries, you might be wondering, am I headed for that? Well, if you want to know if your youth ministry is actually healthy, take a few moments and watch this video where we walk through the 5 vital signs that every youth pastor needs to know about their youth group.